Greetings, this is Vane and welcome back to Let's Play the Elder Scrolls Arena, where we are in the Crypt of Hearts, and in between the Crypt of Hearts, as I do my exploring and everything else, I've just been talking about what's been going on and about current trans politics, which is always fun. I was asked recently how I feel about LGBT rights, and it's like, well, I'm all for LGBT rights. As far as I'm concerned, LGBT rights are the same as human rights, but it's about basic dignity. The fact that I happen to be trans is immaterial to that kind of thinking, as far as I'm concerned. But on the same thing, I've never been one to... Well, LGBT rights, if they're being threatened, I will stand up for them. It's that simple. But I've never been one to be like, oh, I'm gay, we need to protest, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've been to Pride, but I've never really... I mean, I can sort of understand. And yeah, it's great, it's good for people who are coming out to be able to meet other people. But I never really saw the attraction myself. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't support other people. I mean, was it 5 years ago? I tried to set. I was setting up, trying to set up a Pride event for Barking and Dagenham. You know, using my organisational skills. Big part of that was because, like I said, I mean, all this started. I mean, I've been transitioning. I've transitioned. I've been trans. I changed my name. I mean, I still celebrate my naming day every year. You know, it's like a second birthday to me. because it represents the day I took that step and decided to become, well, myself, really. It's the best way to put it. Anyway, I also started doing my Let's Play about 5 years ago, so some of my earlier stuff, if it's still around, you can probably hear me talking about some of the things I was doing back then. About Pride, and I think I might have talked about Pride back then. I mean, I was a member, I mean, that's when I became branch secretary of United Community Park in Dagenham and Havering, and I was involved with the Labour Party. Because it was before that I ended up moving to Chingford with my partner, because she had to be there. Because her mother was no longer able to house sit so that she could be with me. So, I mean, that's kind of when I stopped being on social media, because I got elected as LGBT officer, the first LGBT officer for Barking and Dagenham, and I pointed out that this issue was coming ahead. You know, that there was going to be outcry over trans rights, and that we needed to do something to deal with it. We needed to have something in place. And there needed to be some sort of kind of policy or something. And then it started, really. I mean, I feel as if I put my head above the parapet and people started taking pot shots at it. And normally I didn't let that bother me, you know. But as far as I was concerned, if I'm an LGBT officer, I'm supposed to be standing up for the rights of LGBT people around the county. So when I still remember when Lily Madison, she was a trans woman, and she was elected as women's officer, and basically everyone laid into her. Because she was a trans woman and she'd been elected women's officer. And it's like, and that's when you could see how people really thought about her. I mean, the branch elected her fair and square, and the branch supported her. She was being attacked on like Twitter all the time, and on Facebook, and And so I stood up for her. Because I was LGBT officer and I was another trans woman. It's like, congratulations, you know. She'd been elected fair and square. Her branch had made that decision, you know, that she was suitable as woman's officer. Nobody else really had a point to say anything about it. Yet they did. They attacked her. They were like, she had taken the job from a real woman. Which, I mean, I don't know the situation. Maybe she was the only one that stuck for it because no one else wanted it. I mean, I can understand that situation. That's how I became LGBT officer. You know, there was no one who was out and out who wanted the position. In fact, our branch secretary was like, I know just the person who can do that. And it was like, when it was like, no, we should have LGBT officers. So I became LGBT officer. Very cheeky little bugger. Sure know how to zip round being annoying, don't they? Don't want to know about the troll in there. Okay, so that leads in there. We'll come in here and do this bit then. Yeah. Anyway, so I stood up for Lily Madison. She had a right to stand, and she got elected. But there were people who were like, no, she's a man. Now, here's the thing. I mean, even if she wasn't trans, if a man had stood for the position and got it, I'd be good luck to him. It makes no difference to me because, I mean, as long as they're elected democratically, the officers can be whoever the hell they want. That's what equality is. You know, a branch decides that they want a man as a woman's officer, so be it. But they decided they wanted a trans woman as a woman's officer. That when she stood for it, and they decided that she was the best candidate. I don't know how many other candidates there were. Could have been that she was the only one. It could have been that there were like several. There could have been several trans women standing. There could have been several women standing. In the end, it doesn't really matter. Because as long as the democratic process was followed, whoever was elected has a right to be the woman's officer. It's the whole point. Anyway. So yeah, I stood up for the right of Ladies Madison to be women's officer, and basically that made me a target for the very same transphobic people. It's fairly obvious this is what they do, you know, and they were being transphobic. As far as they're concerned, she was a man. She shouldn't have been in that position. But basically they started attacking me. And how they started attacking me was kind of ludicrous. Because I was LGBT officer, and suddenly it was like, oh, I've taken the job from an actual woman. And it's like, what, is it LGBT officer? You know. You know, as if, you know, there was like some sort of, as if they knew who had stood. And basically there was a lesbian that I had somehow beaten. And it's like, no. You know. I stood because I was asked, and no one else wanted the role. But that wasn't enough to appease some people. It was never going to be enough to appease some people, because people like that, and it is people, they're gonna find, they're trying to justify reasons for their principles, even though they know their principles are wrong. Well, although other people know their principles are wrong. I mean, the thing about transphobes is they believe adamantly 100% that they are right. People with those sort of principles do always think they're 100% right. That's what makes it so difficult to deal with them. Because you can't... it's hard to use reason when people aren't using reason for their principles anyway. And that's why a lot of the arguments don't make sense. But for some reason, there's prominent people, include like J.K. Rowling, who have basically, they're abusing their privilege. To stand up and spout transphobic views and then claim that they're doing it to defend women's rights. And then they get upset when they're called trans exclusionary, but that's exactly what they're doing. You know, their entire stance is that trans women aren't women and shouldn't be included under women's rights. It shouldn't be. They can be feminists, but they still count as men as far as those feminists are concerned. They're not part of the sisterhood. You know. I mean, you can see the logic in their stance, because there's like, you know, they spend all this time fighting the patriarchy, fighting men, whatever, and then suddenly they've got these men in dresses who are basically part of the movement and telling them what to do. The thing is, they aren't men in dresses, they're trans women. But as far as these people are concerned, they're just men in dresses, that's it. Because ultimately, it's a form of sexism. The very sexism they've been fighting. This idea of biological essentialism. That if you're born with a penis, you're a man and you will always be a man. And of course, men are the enemy, so therefore, by definition, trans women are the enemy. And it's like, what? I mean, you can see the logic. You can see how they are thinking. You can see how they're arguing. Doesn't make it right. But you can see how they're doing it. Don't run away from me, you're now dead. I mean, in essence, yeah, some of their thinking, their thinking is logical. Assuming that their principles are sound, which they're not. And that's the big problem at the end of the day. In order for their logic to make sense and to be reasonable, you have to accept the principle that trans women are just men in dresses. They're just men playing pretend. Men pretending to be women. And there's no way they're going to believe it. There's no way I'm going to believe that. Because it ultimately means, I mean, it affects me, and it's like, so basically I'm just pretending to be a woman. That is what the logic comes down to. That's how they see me. I'm just pretending to be a woman. I'm an infiltrator from the patriarchy. Okay. That's all their argument ever is. You're just an infiltrator. You're just pretending. It's like, you know, they're literally enforcing their own privilege as women because they were born with a vagina, which is ironic considering feminism has spent generations basically fighting to say that they're more than just a vagina, that women are more than just a vagina. It turns out that some people born with penises happen to agree that women are more than just a vagina. Stand near a mausoleum and running to the beats. Sir Conifer, may he at last rest. The years seem to have rusted his iron gate shut, but the grounds are undisturbed. Your footballs kick clouds of dust are hanging here. Still there. The hell? That's a tough fight for 48 gold pieces. I mean, it all literally comes down to a point of principle, and the point of principle is whether or not you believe trans women are women. And I do. Trans women are women. Ergo, as a trans woman, I am a woman. It's not that hard. And the problem is a lot of the arguments about that trans exclusionary feminists, or to use the term that they prefer, gender critical feminists, i.e. the idea that gender doesn't exist and therefore cannot be separated from sex. Which still doesn't disclude transsexuals, but apparently does, because apparently sex is immutable. How do I get in there then? I'll have to go through here, won't I? Okay. Anyway. So, I was LGBT officer, I was standing up, I was posting on social media, you know, quite argumentative, that's what I do, but also quite academic. And I made one simple mistake. And everyone knows that Twitter is a cesspool. You know. So that much is on me, I think. Basically, I mean, at the same time, you had the so-called chicken coop, which was basically where they put a leadership challenge against Jeremy Corbyn because they decided that he wasn't going to win an election. It completely ignorant of the fact that they just didn't want him and they were undermining him and therefore destroying any chance he had of ever winning an election. Oh no, it was simply because he was unelectable. Not because they were busy briefing the press and calling him an anti-Semite and basically doing everything they could to undermine him, to the point that some members of the previous Blairite administration even went out so far as to say they spent every day actively undermining. But because they were part of a previous administration, you know, and because Corbyn, it's not that he didn't want confrontation. People say that it's not because he did. It's because he didn't want a confrontation. It's because at the end of the day, he practiced what he preaches, and therefore he wasn't going to expel people from the party who held a different view to him. However much some of us believe they should have done, because they were being actively disrupted, he wouldn't do it. He wanted to work with them, which was admirable. But unfortunately, there's just some people that are never going to accept that. That no matter what you do, they're never going to be happy. They're never going to work with you. You can't reason with that type of person, because their behaviour and their principles are unreasonable. In this case, it was unreasonable to assert that Jeremy Corbyn was unelectable while you were busy undermining and making him unelectable. Okay, time to go. No, I don't. So I don't know what's on the next level, but we're going to head there. Because we're basically done here. And I'm not going to go around and try and clear every monster out of this level. I mean, I'm not going to bother doing that when I get back, so why would I bother doing that now? Anyway, you stand near the stairs leading down further into this crypt to the dead. A cold air gusts from the opening, bringing with it the smell of decaying flesh. Okay, and on that, I will leave it. So this has been Vane doing Let's Play the Elder Scrolls Arena. If you like what you're seeing here, be sure to like, subscribe, share and comment. Please consider sponsoring me on Patreon, and until next time, goodbye.